Out of the kindness of his heart, this man adopted a strange puppy he found. However, months later, he made a shocking discovery. The puppy was something else, something far more dangerous and sinister, which would change his life forever. Robert Amber had gone on morning jogs many times before, but he never once suspected that this particular sprint in the park would yield a surprising result. He had barely made his usual record that morning when he saw something that made him stop dead in his tracks. He spotted a little figure on the cold floor about 10 ft away. Even with the dim 5 a.m. lighting, his keen eyes could still make out the puzzling silhouette. The park was typically a wide walkway with gray interlocking and a few benches here and there. Furthermore, it lacked extra features and fixtures, which made this little spectacle stick out like a sore thumb in the open space where it lay. With his curiosity piqued, Robert slowed down in his little pace, removed his earbuds, and inched closer with caution towards the mysterious object. As he was about 3 ft away from it, he noticed one tiny detail he had missed due to his blocked ears earlier. The mysterious spectacle was a living creature. Robert could hear muffled whimpers and a stretched whining sound emitting from it. Immediately, the young man's guard was up as he realized he was dealing with an unknown living and breathing creature. He was the only one in the park, which meant that if things went south at that moment, immediate help would more or less be non-existent. Robert recoiled, motioning to place his earbuds back in his ears and act as if he never saw anything. However, the young man's curiosity got the better of him, so he heaved a calming sigh, bracing himself for what he was about to do. With caution, Robert shone the torchlight on his phone on the little creature. He was unsure if this was a brilliant or a dumb move. The creature could be sensitive to light and, worse, could lunge at him after sensing his presence. Yet, despite this crippling afterthought, the frightened man needed to know what he was dealing with, and this seemed like the only viable option. His desperation to feed his curiosity outweighed his fear. So, throwing all caution to the wind, Robert bent further down to sneak a peek, only for him to freeze at what he saw. Cuddled up in the walkway was a brown puppy who appeared no older than a week. As it whimpered helplessly, its body shook with such intensity on the cold floor. In addition, the tiny pup squeezed itself in such a way that its tiny paws covered its eyes as if trying to block away the cold, harsh world. Instantly, Robert felt pity and compassion for the little creature. How could such a thing have happened? Where was the pup's mother? And most importantly, how did it end up in the park so early in the morning? Robert's mind buzzed with multiple questions. However, he took action before he dwelt on them for too long. Not sensing any threat from the little pup, Robert quickly picked it up and wrapped it in the small hand towel he carried. His heart sank when he felt the tiny, trembling creature in his palm and noticed how quickly it melted into the warm blanket. Suddenly, he felt a sense of responsibility for the puppy. With his morning jog now forgotten, Robert raced home, eager to attend to his new buddy. On the way back, the puppy began to sneeze repeatedly. Having been in the cold for heaven knows how long, the young man could understand why the little thing could have caught a cold. Robert feared he might have made the wrong decision by heading home instead of an animal clinic. But what could he do? It was barely the crack of dawn. So which clinic could he possibly find? The young man battled with his inner thoughts throughout his walk back home. When he finally arrived, he wasted no time getting things in place. Robert laid the pup in a soft, warm blanket and heated a kettle of water. Following the tips he found online, Robert promptly set up his humidifier to warm up his new shivering friend and gently rubbed its tiny body with a warm towel. As he did this, the pup let out a little sneeze, breaking his heart further. However, with time, the sneezing subsided, and the puppy eventually relaxed in his hands, the trembling ceasing altogether. With the pup growing calm and stable, Robert felt a growing sense of pride and satisfaction engulf him. Later that day, he would take the little thing to the local vet downtown to ensure it received proper care. In his moment of relaxation, Robert pondered the events that had just transpired that morning. What would have happened if some random stranger, not as benevolent as him, had picked it up? What if a wild animal had met it first? Even worse, would the puppy have been safe if he had discovered it a bit later? As Robert lost himself in his slew of thoughts, something touched him suddenly, snapping him back to reality. Looking down, he found the tiny pup limping toward his thigh before snuggling against it. The sight tugged at Robert's heartstrings. It was simply the most heartwarming gesture he had witnessed in a long time. Now that the puppy was warm and mobile, Robert could finally see its adorable face. Holding it up to his face, he noted its large dark eyes and tiny nose. Briefly, he wondered about the nature of its breed and its gender. At that moment, a great sense of gratitude washed over him. The young man was happy that he was the one who found the creature. He believed fate caused their paths to intertwine so that he could save the pup. Be that as it may, Robert knew he shouldn't get too attached. He had done his part, and their time together would ultimately end by daybreak. Little did he know that fate had even more unexpected plans in store for him regarding this unusual encounter. Despite his initial resolve, Robert thought one more act of kindness wouldn't hurt, so he named his new friend Rocky, signifying the resilience in the struggle for survival Robert had witnessed when they met. Although he had no clue whether Rocky was male or female, he reckoned the name was befitting either way. About 2 hours later, the young man took his little companion to the local vet as planned. However, the minute Robert walked into the clinic, his body froze in horror at what he saw. The waiting room was dimly lit, with weird stains on the walls and worn-out chairs scattered about. In addition, dirty cotton gauze and swabs littered the floor, blocking the pathway leading to the veterinarian's office. The air reeked of disinfectant, yet it did little to mask the underlying smell of waste and grime. The unsanitary environment instantly repulsed Robert. At first, he did a double check, unsure whether he had stepped into the right place. But when the cries of animals inside the building confirmed it, Robert was left dumbfounded. Instantly, he wondered if the clinic had ever undergone a health inspection at all, given its current appalling condition. Robert's concern for Rocky skyrocketed. As he walked down the hallway, he thought of searching for another clinic that did not appear half as disorganized as this place. But the young man was racing against time. He had a job and other personal engagements on his schedule. Also, it didn't help that the other animal clinic was half a mile away. At a loss for what to do, Robert mapped out another plan in his head. Instead of leaving Rocky with the vet like he initially planned, he would get the pup checked and take it to an animal shelter instead. Reluctantly, he walked into the vet's office with Rocky in his hands, fighting the urge to throw up. After a brief examination, the vet stated that the pup was clear to go, revealing that nothing about its condition called for immediate concern. Relieved by the news, Robert felt like he could breathe once again. With that out of the way, the young man made one more inquiry. What exactly was Rocky? In response, the vet confirmed that the pup was male and its clear skin indicated it was merely a week old. However, that was as far as his medical expertise could take him. Although the vet found it difficult to ascertain Rocky's exact breed, he assured Robert that with time, the pup's distinct properties would become apparent, making identification easier. Little did Robert know that when that time came, what he would discover would leave him in complete and utter shock. With the checkup yielding favorable results, The young man quickly dashed out of the clinic with Rocky, desperate to breathe some fresh air. However, as he stood in the bustling street with the little pup, he was hit with a new problem. What could he do now? He needed to walk down the path that was ultimately beneficial to Rocky. His tiny friend had been through the most stressful ordeal that morning, so the young man had to make its comfort his immediate mission. Deep down, Robert knew he had grown more attached to his tiny friend than he cared to admit. Yet, notwithstanding, he remained steadfast in his decision to part ways with it as soon as possible. After much deliberation, Robert eventually dropped Rocky off at a shelter on his way to work. Subsequently, he spent the better part of his day convincing himself that he had done the right thing by giving Rocky away. But as the day progressed, he discovered that he couldn't help but think about his buddy. This weakness was what Robert had dreaded most. A few years back, Robert had kept a Labrador named Dax. They were inseparable as they were always spotted together in public and on social media. Whenever Robert was away, either for work or social meetings, his pet Labrador would usually go on a rampage courtesy of the separation anxiety disorder it suffered from. Dax would destroy Robert's apartment, cry at the top of its voice, and display rather uncharacteristic eating and social habits. Yet, despite Dax's frequent aggressive fits, his owner still loved it unconditionally. Such a bond was unlike any he had ever formed in his entire life. Robert believed he had found the perfect life companion, but boy, could he have been more wrong. One fateful day, Robert noticed something concerning about Dax. His furry friend barely touched his meal, treats, and chew toys. This uncharacteristic behavior troubled Robert immensely. Immediately, he picked him up, intending to head to the vet for a checkup. But unfortunately, poor Dax couldn't make the short trip as it passed on the way. Following the heart-wrenching incident, Robert struggled to heal and move on. He tried everything to forget about his little pet, but nothing worked. The environment always seemed to remind him of his lost companion. When the pain overwhelmed him, he made the drastic move of relocating, hopeful for a chance to begin anew. Luckily for him, the opportunity came with time, and he eventually accepted Dax's absence from his life, consequently letting go of the awful past. Since then, Robert had never once reflected on that chapter of his life. But that was until little Rocky came into the picture. For the first time, Robert hated this part of himself, the part that always succumbed to animals. Finally realizing his newfound attachment, the young man wasted no time making his next move. After getting off work, he rushed to the shelter, praying Rocky was still there. Upon arriving, a rush of relief washed over him with such blinding force when he found his buddy still in the building. And just like that, Robert ended up adopting Rocky. Although he still harbored reservations due to his previous experience, the animal lover anticipated a completely different ending than Dax's. Little did he know that his wish would be granted in the most unimaginable way possible. As the days turned into weeks, Robert's fondness for Rocky deepened. He diligently fed the pup healthy meals and showered it with treats and toys. To further prove his commitment to his tiny friend, he searched for animal care tips online, often engaging with experts through email and physical consultations. In cases where he was busy with other engagements, he hired a trustworthy nanny to watch over Rocky. Robert's sacrifice and love for his little pup were unwavering and noticeable even to the blind. What's more, Rocky reciprocated this care and affection. The furry creature beamed at the sight of his human companion, wagged its tail happily, snuggled up beside Robert, and often stuck to him like glue whenever the duo were surrounded by people. Although it didn't suffer from separation anxiety like Robert's previous canine friend, it still had a way of informing Robert that it enjoyed his presence. Like any proud owner, the young man felt a sense of pride and satisfaction whenever he noticed these exciting traits. life was beginning to look bright again for Robert. Suddenly, the young man looked forward to building more memories and experiences with his furry friend. With each passing day, Robert made this silent wish, unaware of how it would return to haunt him months later. As Rocky grew more robust and energetic, it began to take its canine form more and more. Its fur began to pop out more in a dazzling golden-brown color, its ears stood pointedly, and its eyes began to adopt a golden-brown tint. When it was 4 months old, Robert guessed Rocky could either be a Siberian Husky or a Tamascan. Oftentimes, he gushed at Rocky's majestic form, taking pride in the fact that the stray puppy he adopted that fateful day was one of the top dog breeds he loved. Whenever he took Rocky out on strolls, many eyes stared at it, with a few onlookers requesting to either pet it or take a picture. Seeing that his furry buddy was the envy of other animal owners warmed his heart. Unfortunately for Robert, his moment of pride was short-lived. As Rocky turned 5 months, one day Robert noticed some strange occurrences in little Rocky. Firstly, his dog would stare intently at seemingly nothing for minutes on end. Then, when it stared at other animals or even humans, it would growl menacingly and walk in paces as if sizing up the spectacle. Similarly, in some cases, it would dig frantically in the backyard as if searching for something. Robert had no idea what to make of this bizarre behavior, so instinctively he made a quick trip to a vet, seeking expert opinion on the matter. However, as soon as he got the answer he sought, he was hit with a shocking surprise. When the vet laid eyes on Rocky, he jumped in fear, blurting out words that made Robert freeze in dread. Rocky was neither a Siberian Husky nor a Tamascan, but was indeed a coyote, an animal of the wild. The news was like a punch in the gut to Robert, but just before he could digest the revelation, what followed next left him feeling pained and defeated. The vet had already called the National Animal Conservation Institute, stating it was hospital policy to do so, as most owners usually refuse to give up the pet. Robert struggled to process the turn of events, marveling at the speed at which everything was happening. How did one innocent visit blow out of proportion like this? Briefly, he begged the doctor to reconsider, promising that he would steer clear of other people and put Rocky on a leash if it meant maintaining ownership over him. Sadly, his plea fell on deaf ears. The doctor assured Robert that the move was also for his safety, stating that Rocky's psyche was unstable and unpredictable, which meant that it could quickly become wild and dangerous. At that point, Robert remembered the eerie behavior he observed in Rocky, the very antics that had prompted this visit. Considering this factor, Robert silently agreed with the vet's advice. With great reluctance, the young man decided to let Rocky go. Within minutes, a team from the Conservation Institute arrived at the clinic, whisking the little canine away. The separation was the most heartfelt display anyone had ever seen. Rocky fought against the people who tried to sedate it, growling and pleading with its eyes for Robert to do something about the situation. The scene broke Robert, but he knew it was for the best. After they took Rocky to the Animal Conservation Center, Robert had difficulty adjusting to life without his beloved companion. He visited occasionally, but it still didn't feel like old times. However, the young man found solace in a heartwarming observation. Rocky appeared free and at peace in its new environment. Moreover, it had a fellow coyote to play with. This bit of happiness sent a wave of relief over Robert. Although they were no longer together, Robert had still found Rocky a better home, one that was together with nature where it originally belonged. What an exciting story! What would you have done if you were Robert? Would you have given up your little furry friend? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next video.